talking of the summer transfer window, the Super League in Turkey seems to be the one where, it's got our eyebrows raised. How they've managed to get Jhon Durán. Remember him if you're an Aston Villa fan, the Colombian that lit up the Premier League a couple of seasons back. He's been brought over from Saudi Arabia, from the Saudi Arabian leagues, and Victor Osimhen, who was, of course, an Arsenal target amongst many other Premier League teams, is staying in the Super League for yet another season. What is going on there? This shouldn't be happening, should it, Andy?
No, I guess not by the normal rules of European football, but those have changed over the last couple of years. And we've thought of the Super League as a sort of, Premier League outcast league in the past. But this is different because we talked a couple of weeks ago, I think it was on Ask, about how Galatasaray have managed to find a way of investing in superstars that are still their peak, convincing them to come and then convincing them to stay, which is pretty amazing. So I think you look at last season, you think even after Icardi got the ACL that kept him out for most of last season, that he sustained in the Europa League game against Tottenham, you think, okay, they finished the season with the possibility of playing Osimhen and Alvaro Morata up front if they want to. And of course, a lot of people looked at the Osimhen loan and rightly thought that it was born out of his contract dispute with Napoli and his difficulties leaving there and their difficulty finding a buyer in Europe. The Super League window is the one still open in the first days of September, so that's why he ended up going there. Fine. But no one thought, let me get this right. No one outside Galatasaray thought that he would stay there permanently. But they really believed they could sell him the vision that when they got him there, he would enjoy it so much, be so adored and be so successful that they would convince him to stay. Now, look, there are a few little caveats to that.
Money, I would have thought was a biggie.
Yeah, well, money is clearly they with sponsors' help have made an enormous financial effort. I mean, they're paying the 75 million euro clause in stages, which is several times the Super League record transfer, by the way, to Napoli, and they're giving him a reputed 16 million euros a year after tax, which is more than he could get anywhere else in Europe. Now, he figured out what he wanted to do fairly early on in the transfer window. So he had a great season at Galatasaray. He got this huge offer from Saudi, didn't want to go. They upped the offer, he still didn't want to go. But there was a sense that maybe he was hanging out and saying, well, okay, maybe there are options, maybe there's Premier League interest. But there was never really a Premier League team prepared to go all in for him, and particularly not anywhere near the money that Galatasaray were offering.
But also it's changed, hasn't it? The landscape, even for the Premier League clubs, has changed.
Yeah,
they're looking at a different bracket of player and a particular type.
Yeah, they are. And I think almost the Super League has found an opportunity here. Now, I think they've had to be creative to find the money, like I said, from sponsors and third parties, because the TV money's not anywhere near it. It can't come anywhere near touching those sort of wages. So I guess, though, the interesting thing to note is that Mauro Icardi is kind of like a template for this, because he burnt every bridge at PSG, was still in his 20s, came over on loan, was convinced to come over on loan, works for him. And everyone said at the time, wow, I can't believe he's gone there. And then everyone said, but he won't stay after the year. And he did stay. And so really that has provided the template for the Osimhen deal. Now, it's still something that's absolutely remarkable. And it's interesting how, we'll get to Jhon Durán in a minute, but Osimhen, you could argue, in a way, is the equivalent of Mourinho at Fenerbahce. It's like a way of selling the club and a competition that people don't really watch globally, apart from in Turkish expat communities, because it's not very good at selling its rights, the Super League abroad.
Although it's a way of Champions League, though, isn't it? Champions League's another window.
Yeah, sure, but realistically, that's what, eight games in 3 months. That's not the same omnipresent thing you need to really build your brand. And they're managing to build their brand in a completely different, completely new way.
I would have thought the Jhon Durán experience, as Andy's just touched on, would have been even more remarkable in a way, because I thought we were led to believe he went to Saudi, this up-and-coming striker who we thought would be a world beater. He went to Saudi for the money. So Andy's suggesting that maybe it's not all about the money. Why top players would be going to the Turkish Super League. Do you concur?
I just think it's a case of, it's situational. I think we've said about Osimhen. I think no one was willing to commit the amount of money there that would be for him. If I'm Victor Osimhen, though, I'm probably looking at the Gyökeres saga. Gyökeres is a year older. He's gone from Coventry in the Championship. He's had a very good spell at Sporting in Portugal as well. Osimhen's looking at that and going, right, I'm a year younger. I've banged goals in Serie A. I've come over here now. I've still banged goals in again. Why aren't people still taking a chance on me? And it's an interesting one, and that's where I'd be looking at it for him. But I just don't think Andy's hit the nail on the head. I just don't think any club was willing to fully commit there for him. The money that it would require, and teams. He's been linked with Chelsea constantly. You look at the strikers that Chelsea have gone for this summer. They've gone for young Liam Delap, young player. They've gone João Pedro, young player as well. Both already played in the Premier League, so have proven themselves there. That's what they have gone for. And then the other teams probably can't afford him. So your Man Uniteds and such, they can't afford him. Newcastle would have to sell Isak. Liverpool have obviously got designs and other strikers. So it's a very, very tough market for Osimhen. And then for Durán, I think that's quite simple. His wages are obscene, and no team can pay that. I think it's been put out there. He was offered to Man United, but Man United can't take on those wages, especially in their situation. So that put off a lot of teams there. And that's why he's not coming back. Now, he might come back in a few years. He's still a young lad, and he was, like you said at the start, absolutely banging for a period in the Premier League. Just really interesting striker because of the way he plays as well. And he just wants to shoot, and he just wants to, he's only got one thing in mind when he gets the ball. And it's an interesting one for him to be there as well. But I think it's just, it's purely situational with the wages and such, and the fees that are required.
And it is an interesting thing when you brought Gyökeres in there. The fact that really Gyökeres should be the easiest player to sell in the world. Like, the numbers are insane. And I know you can say, oh, it's the Portuguese League, etc., etc. Look, he did it in the Champions League as well. Anyone who watches him regularly can tell you that all-round game is fantastic. And yet, here you have like a Premier League club who, quite interested in him.
Yeah, it's true.
Like edging towards a deal. Look, it looks like he will end up at Arsenal now, but really, in previous transfer windows, if we go back 3 years, you can't put him on the shelf before someone picks him up.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's this painstaking incremental bidding because everyone's watching the teller, apart from these Super League clubs who think, okay, we've got ourselves something else. We've got a way of selling our league abroad that we never did before. And Durán is different even from Osimhen, because with Durán still, I realise he's done stuff in the Premier League and the Champions League to an extent. You think of the goal against Bayern, of course, at Villa Park, which was one of the Champions League highlights of last season. But he's not yet an established superstar, is he? He's on established superstar money, but he's not yet an established superstar. Yeah. So this is maybe going back a little stage further and thinking, okay, we're going to bank on this guy to build us and build our brand, and build our notoriety, who we believe is a genuine star of the future. And again, long term, it looks absolutely possible. But after what Galatasaray have been able to do with first Icardi and then Osimhen, and bear in mind, we haven't even mentioned Leroy Sané. And them getting him.
Tammy Abraham as well. Come on.
Yeah, we'll give Tammy a bench.
Well, why not?
Why not? It's a huge change in what's going on in the European transfer market.
How do they build on it? I mean, we scoffed, or slightly scoffed at the Tammy Abraham, but he's on good wages there. You can't argue with that, can you?
Oh my God, so good.
Well,
but that's you're absolutely right to point that out, because Abraham, like Sané, like Osimhen, is getting paid more in the Turkish Super League than he would be at any other big European
that's
club.
bonkers, isn't it?
But Tammy Abraham's a good lad. I can clearly see, when you look at or how he spoke about his move to Roma, and I think I know there's money involved, and it's easy for me to say this. I think he does like the different cultural experiences that are involved.
He looks like he's willing to be implicated.
He's a very smart, intelligent guy, and I think I think he's liking the cultural experience of this. And what's the alternative? Come back to the Premier League and playing the mid-table club and the club and slugging it out there, sitting on a bench at a top club? No, he can play regularly in a great city, taking a different culture, a different style of football. He's going to be playing European football. It's great for him.
But the reason why I ask how do they build on it is because if you look at historically, the Turkish Super League has attracted top players from the major or the other major European leagues previously. I was talking to you earlier on, Andy, about Wesley Sneijder. I remember him going there and thinking, whoa, Turkish Super League. We have perhaps an old opinion of the Turkish Super League as not being on the level where players that are playing the top European league should be going to. I'm saying that that's probably outdated. However, historically, there have been these moments. Did they build on those moments? I'm not sure. How can they sustain it?
No, and I think Sneijder and Drogba going to Galatasaray was slightly different. Obviously, they were entering into their 30s. That they weren't like completely done at the end of their career at all, which is something that, as you say, we traditionally sort of associate with the Turkish Super League. But they were still of a decent age. But yeah, you're right. I think there has to be a plan going forward, and I think the plan, especially going for these players of a younger age, is if you actually own them, maybe you will have some sort of sell on. I think secondly, the fact that the dynamism they add to it could actually make you a threat in the Champions League. And what is a huge thing for Galatasaray, particularly this season, and it would have been the same whoever were the champions of the Super League. They're straight into the group stage of the Champions League. The Conference League might seem like small beer when we're talking about these multi-million euro transfers. The Conference League has done them an absolute solid, because the coefficient points it's added has meant instead of getting through 3 rounds to get themselves into the Champions League, Galatasaray straight in there. They went out in the playoff to young boys in Switzerland, who obviously ended up getting whacked left and right. But that cast a big shadow over last season, and they had to really turn it around. But that they were getting big players with the thought, you don't buy Osimhen to go and play in the Europa League, do you? You're going big by doing that. And obviously Fenerbahce have their qualifiers to get through as well. And so to actually get some level of sustainable success in the Champions League, and especially with the increased amount of games, the increased TV money, all that sort of stuff, that is another one of those things that makes the gamble at least sort of palatable.
If they want to be, if the Turkish League wants to be taken seriously and not be dismissed by, people who watch Serie A, Premier League, La Liga and such, the Turkish teams are going to have to make waves in these European competitions. I'm talking about some upsets of big teams, maybe getting through to the quarters, to the semis. I know that's an ambitious thing to say, but that's the only way that the league is going to be taken seriously. It's not by signing Jhon Durán. It's not by bringing in Leroy Sané or anybody like this. It is by your results and where you get to in particular competitions. And it can be the conference, it can be the Europa, the Champions League, it doesn't matter. But that is how they're going to be taken seriously outside of tech.